I think safety has to begin within oneself, and it's linked with trust, with self-trust. At least in my experience and what I'm constantly working on and learning and trying to grow with is when we trust ourselves, we know that we have someone to fall back on, ourselves, that we can catch ourselves. And this is not to say that we shouldn't have others in our lives or don't have others in our lives. Of course, I hope we all do, but that's not always the case. Some people only have themselves. But I'm speaking about this calm, grounded feeling that I trust that no matter what happens, I'll be able to get through it.
Hello, fellow beings. Welcome to Tapasya Loading, a safe space to attempt honest, raw, and authentic conversation in homage to the ancient act of stoking a sacred fire. The version you're about to hear has been edited for time. The complete unedited version lives inside the community. More on that later on. You'll find the link in the episode notes as well. So to start off with, welcome. It is an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on, Pallavi. I really mean that.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very much looking forward.
Likewise. I think we've been trying to make this happen for over a year now.
I think so.
And for context, I would like to go on the record to offer you an official apology for having messed your schedule about a couple of times already. For context, the last time we were scheduled to record, I was in the middle of literally nowhere, one of the smallest islands in the world. This place is a UN biosphere. It is as remote as it gets, and the internet connection will remind you of that sometimes.
I remember, it's no problem.
There is so much there's so much I want to ask you about without getting too prying, so much I'm curious about. And I will confess, I don't really go with a script or like a list of questions because I feel like there's enough podcasts to do that thing. I really do want this to be a spontaneous conversation between artists who are in the thick of it. But I will say, I think I stumbled upon your work, through Cyan, who was been a guest here too a few years back. And she's coming back on, by the way, next week.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, shout out to Cyan. And I do remember at some point I stumbled upon your podcast, the Conscious Artist podcast.
Right, because she was on my podcast as well.
Maybe that's how I stumbled upon it. She might have shared. And
yeah,
you know how this whole ecosystem works. People just tend to find each other. And I found you, and I was so, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, impressed is one way to look at it. But more than impressed, I mean, needless to say, your career is as impressive as it gets on multiple levels.
Thank you.
But also well touched by some of the topics you kind of get out of your comfort zone to address. And having listened through quite a catalogue of your episodes, I know it can't have been a very easy initiative to take. There are so many factors involved. There's the actual career factor involved, the industry factor involved in addressing certain issues. There's a cultural factor involved, which I personally have had my own journey with, which is the best place to start on this. How did the Conscious Artist podcast start?
What was the impetus?
Intentionality. Yeah, we're like what made...
Yeah.
But people don't start... By the way, from audiences, contrary to what a lot of people believe, people don't start podcasts on a whim. I mean, maybe they start, but they don't sustain it on a whim. But those of us who keep doing it, we're really passionate about it. There's a very visceral reason we stick to it. So what would you say is yours?
Yeah, before the podcast came to be, so I would say from around COVID time, maybe even before that, I had been quite intentional and focused about the way I was working with my private students at the piano, in terms of how I was teaching them, how I was helping to guide them not only pianistically or musically, but also emotionally. And I remember all the difficulties and the challenges and the pitfalls of being a young music student, trying to apply for conservatories, applying for competitions, all the pressures that come along with trying to make it in the music world. And it was just sort of a natural intention to work with the students from a place of, I see you, I understand what you're feeling. I've been there. Let me help you with what I've learned. Let me help guide you through the things that have helped me. Maybe they'll help you. And so it sort of started with that. And I started doing, presenting workshops at, some different summer camps and festivals, how to deal with performance anxiety, how to prepare for a competition. And I don't just mean like how to practice, but how to mentally prepare, also physically prepare your body, the stamina that you need. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you exercising well? All those things. And I was pitching these workshops to an organization back in October 2021, so 4 years ago. And the person I was speaking with said, this is all great, and of course we'd be interested, but why don't you do a podcast? And my first thought was, well, who would listen to that? Who's going to listen to me doing a podcast?
Raise his hand.
And then I started writing down ideas. It was something I never thought about. Podcast was in no world of, thought for me. And I started writing down ideas. And within 2 weeks, I had about 35 episodes worth of content. Again, like you, I don't script my podcasts. I have a topic in mind and or a guest in mind. And so it's either the topic that I want to talk about and I find the person that I want to speak about that or that I know would be good to speak about that, or I find the guest that I want and I say, tell me what you want to talk about. But other than the broad topic, I don't script anything. But I had all of these ideas written down and I said, okay, I think I can do this. And I can see that there's a lot that I want to share and that needs to be talked about. And so ultimately, the podcast was created to be a safe space for people to feel seen and heard and have their experiences and their stories either represented through the podcast or represented by others, reflected by others' stories. And it became a healing project that even I didn't know I needed and that I feel is so needed in this industry. And I've just launched season 8 this week on Monday, October 20th.
Brilliant.
So it's been such a passion project. And when I started it, it was just purely that, a passion project and a hobby, if we can even call it that. And it's becoming more and more. I've developed now proper workshops, the conscious artist workshops that I present at universities and schools and festivals.
Beautiful.
I was teaching at Curtis this past week, these mental health workshops. And I have more big plans to keep developing it and develop the conscious artist. But essentially, I feel that it's a movement that we need in our industry to help better the health of our industry. And the more we talk about all the challenges that we face that are quite universal and common, first of all, we feel less alone. Secondly, we find healing in community. And thirdly, we break the stigma. And all of those things are vital for the health of our industry, for the health of the existing musicians, and for the health of the future generation of musicians.
So true. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the one that sticks out at me the most, possibly because of recent experiences, which aren't that recent anymore, it's more like a loop, is the stigma around it. It's still unbelievable how much stigma still exists all around it. But you think with all the social media posts with hashtag mental health, I'm not sure how much of the stigma is actually being helped by that. It's like people have numbed out to those, and just the stigma is still a very genuine challenge.
I think there has been genuine change and movement, at least in majority among the musicians. I would say more and more musicians are finding the courage to be vocal and be a mental health advocate. I think the perhaps the industry as a whole still has a long way to go. Sometimes what you're saying about, maybe hashtags sort of just being there for the sake of it, it's a little bit of like the topic of like diversity and inclusion. Sometimes it's a little bit for the sake of it rather than really truly addressing the root of the issue. So again, that's part of my mission. It's to spread awareness. It's to talk about these things. It's about to have these conversations and to help arm the next generation with the tools to deal with the hardships that will always come in life and always come in whatever field you choose.
Thank you so much for sharpening that statement. I really appreciate you for that. 100%. You articulated it so much better than I did. It's so much more than a hashtag. And there is the risk of it turning into a token without actually doing the real work. Thank you for clarifying that. You, and correct me if I'm wrong, you say that it started off, your first sentence was about safety, having a safe space to have these conversations. And I'd be, and full disclosure, you're not the first person or first guest I've asked this, but I'm always very curious how my guests define safety, because I know that can be, I'm not sure subjective is the right word, but there are varying degrees to which the word actually has played a role in their lives. So in your opinion, where does safety begin?
That's such an interesting question. I think safety has to begin within oneself, and it's linked with trust, with self-trust. At least in my experience and what I'm constantly working on and learning and trying to grow with is when we trust ourselves, we know that we have someone to fall back on, ourselves, that we can catch ourselves. And this is not to say that we shouldn't have others in our lives or don't have others in our lives. Of course, I hope we all do, but that's not always the case. And some people only have themselves. And of course, sometimes that becomes a coping mechanism that you have to become so self-reliant that you become hyper independent, and it's even a trauma not to trust others. So I'm not speaking about that, but I'm speaking about this calm, grounded feeling that I trust that no matter what happens, I'll be able to get through it. I'll be able to find my way. I'll be able to pick myself up, and not from a place of resilience, not only a place of resilience of, well, I've done it before, I'll have to do it again. If I have to do it again, I'll do it again. Not that, but truly like at peace with this feeling that we are capable. In terms of my podcast and what I say about safe space, I mean, there are so many different types of safety that we feel on a daily basis within ourselves, and then also with our environment, with people, with family, with friends, with culture, with society. And when I speak about safe space, first and foremost, because it's a podcast and it's actually audio only, I'm talking about emotional safety. I want my guests to feel emotionally safe, to listen, to share, to exist, to feel, whatever it is. And I hope that I create that space for them. I think I do. There have been multiple guests that have shared things on the podcast for the very first time. And so I take that as an indication that I'm hopefully doing something right in that way. And I tell them, this is a recorded podcast. If there's something that I ask you or something that you start to talk about and you realize, you know what, I think I'm not ready to share that, or I think I don't want to share that, don't worry, I'll take it out. There's no problem. And I always tell them that from the beginning. Part of why I do audio only is also for the safety feeling. It comes from a personal point, which is that I don't love being on camera. And so I think naturally I gravitate much more towards audio rather than video. Also because I'm a pianist, I'm a musician, my ears are much more attuned, I think. And I want people to feel comfortable if they want to be in their pajamas while they're recording. Well, I'm in my pajamas half the time while I'm recording, or they just want to sit there with their cup of tea and curl up, on their sofa and just feel comfortable. I think that's important in some of the really difficult conversations that we have. And then there's also the aspect which I've only discovered after doing some seasons and realizing I've made the connection as to why I like it. It's that for me, and I think it's a general fact, we listen much more and much more deeply when we're not looking.
100%.
So for example, if you watch a concert versus if you listen actively, I'm not talking about passively while you're walking down the street in New York or something. No, I mean, sitting down on your sofa and just putting on a CD or an LP or a digital recording and just listening actively. We listen so much more intently when we're only focused on one of our senses. And so part of what I've discovered with the intensity and the vulnerability that ends up existing in the conversations that I have with my guests, I think comes from the fact that it's just my voice in their ears and their voice in my ears. And that's all we're focused on. And it's very intimate, but in a very beautiful way. And, a lot of the guests that I've had, I've never even met before in person. And sometimes the very first conversation I'm having with those guests is in the recorded podcast episode, just like you and I are having. And by the end of the episode, I've made a new friend, because you can't have such a deep conversation and not find a bond.
I know, right?
And I find it to be one of the most beautiful things. So that for me, that is what I feel with safety. Of course, we can, go on for a long time about safety and personal relationships and all of that. But this for me is what I'm trying to create and what I'm seeking with the podcast and with the conversations that I have.
Mic drop. And fun fact, I actually almost did drop my mic. Thanks to my clumsy legs. Seriously though, the part you started off with about internal safety, feeling safe with oneself, that just, I really felt that in my body. And very cautiously, I would like to add from audiences as well, that when you say that as a woman in the industry we're in, there's an additional value to it. People should really tune in on that. And I say that cautiously because it's not my place to comment much on as a man, but I am well familiar passively on how dark that can get. So mad respect for you starting off with the relevance of finding our internal safety and the inherent relevance that plays in the larger picture.
Thank you for saying that.
No, thank you for starting there, because it's, with all the noise out there, the collateral damage that ends up being that is actually clarity. Yes, we know things are not ideal, but it's not the best place to hang out in. The noise is not something we want to bypass, but it's easy to just keep hanging out there. That's what the noise is designed to do.
That's what autopilot is.
Pretty much. It's designed to keep us there, and right. So many times it works. So that for me is a reflection of someone who's done a lot of inner work. So mad respect to start off with. And
my therapist is great. Shout out to her.
Well, therapists are, only as good as their clients, really. Well, that didn't come out right, but I mean, even the best therapist is pretty useless without a client who's not ready to put in the work, in my humble opinion. And the stuff you say about your podcast, by the way, those could have been words out of my mouth. That is exactly the way I feel. I started off, not to go off on one, but I started off because at some point during the pandemic, hanging out on my own at home, I realized I have some seriously cool friends I've met over the past 20 years working as a musician. And there have been so many brilliant conversations. Why doesn't the world know about these? And, don't I have a responsibility to let them know about these amazing people I've had the chance to have in my life? That's how it started off. And eventually, I didn't even know podcasts were even a thing. They weren't that much of a thing at the time. But there is an additional aspect to that. At the time, the therapy I was doing was all audio only. Like, this was with someone who I've never seen in my life, and that's his thing. Like, part of his thing is he will not show himself. It's a very specific modality, and the guy is absolutely legit. And it was based on repetitive hearing. So he gives you the kind of therapy which reveals newer layers every time you listen back to it, listen back to the sessions. That's what it's designed to do. And I'm pretty sure now, in hindsight, there was an association going on there. Like, that kind of pointed me towards the power of what something like this could be as well. You know, and I noticed after having edited about 130 episodes, I'm a different human being than when I started this thing off. 100%. Like, you feel it in your cells. I also want to say it's only been this season that I've actually officially started doing video. In the beginning, the early episodes, the protocol was we turn our cameras off. It's only now where I guess the next responsibility I have is to do my bit to spread the word a little more, see how that works. So I'm trying not to get too carried away with the whole promo shtick, but I'm also trying to
No, but I get it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I could probably do the same, but you know, there's only so many things I can do at once. So.
Oh, 100%.
Something's got to give. And I'd rather keep the quality of the podcast and
100%. 100%.
You know.
Yeah, it's not an easy balance. I'm every now and then I'm actually like training. I hired a mentor now to train me how to literally get all of this together and streamline it into one profile, which actually makes sense. But speaking of doing lots of things at once, let's just make it very clear for audiences who are meeting for the first time that you are creme de la creme concert pianist roster out there in the world. For those of you who know you through your podcast and just through this episode, that's something we definitely want to dig a little deep into. You, in my opinion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you happen to be part of a generation or movement who also have broken a major stereotype by being an internationally touring and successful concert pianist. Because up until very recently, that was a position reserved for a very specific demographic which didn't include people like you, which is someone brown with an Indian name, not raised with Western classical music in their immediate environment, or at least thought of to have. Where did that whole story start? Why are you a concert pianist, Pallavi? And why are you not playing sitar?
Well, I was born and raised in the US.
Mm-hmm.
My parents came to the US in the early 80s to do their doctorates. And I was born there. My sister was born there. And when I was a toddler, I don't remember any of this, but this is how the story goes that I've been told. When I was a toddler, I used to watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Fred Rogers was this wonderful kids TV show host. He used to have different musicians on the show. He taught empathy and compassion and kindness and community and friendship and just so many beautiful values to kids and to adults too. And apparently I was 2.5 years old, and one day I pointed to the TV while the show was on and said, I want to play that. And it was a piano. And so my parents took me to the local Suzuki school. And they said, I'm too young. Come back when I'm 3. So I went back when I was...
You were what, 2 years old?
I was 2.5.
Oh.
And so when I was 3, they took me back and I started in Suzuki with group keyboard lessons and learning how to read music and learning rhythms and all of this stuff. And eventually started private piano lessons. When I was 6, I started playing the violin as well because I used to go to the school and see all these kids carrying their little violin cases. And I said, I want that too. So that's how I started violin. And I did Suzuki in both instruments until I was about 10. And I switched to private teachers. And it was something that I always loved doing. I had a lot of self-discipline. In fact, I think my parents tell me that when I was younger, maybe 7 or 8 years old, they used to say like, okay, you can play piano if you get straight A's at school.
Wow.
And at some point, they realized pretty quickly that this was not just a hobby, it was very serious. And it is 100% credit to them for giving me all the support that they gave.
Beautiful.
And having no musical background, figuring out how to guide me in the best way, whether it was talking to my teachers or, listening to people that said, okay, she should go take master classes with this person, or she should study with this person. She should do this competition. She should play here, there. They really guided me. And the trajectory that I've had studying music, going to some of the best conservatories in the world, is 100% because of their support and their ability
Beautiful.
to guide me. I mean, it's not just saying like, oh, I owe everything to my parents. I actually do in this case, because I would not, if they had not put in the effort, helped me, taken me everywhere to all my lessons, all my competitions, everything, and just helped guide me, I wouldn't have been able to get to the schools and the teachers and
Wow.
all the opportunities that I had. So that was it was all self-desired, but 100% a community effort.
That is so beautiful to hear. That's such a wonderful counterbalance to most of the instances in origin stories I hear, especially amidst, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, South Asian childhood origin stories, wherein
no, for sure. I mean, most of them are like, okay, you can play, but you have to go be a doctor. And my parents never said that. They always said, if you want to play music, you do it, but then you have to work hard. You don't have to play. You don't have to play piano, because they saw the amount of work that it was taking also to actually make it as a career. They saw that. When I switched, it's a very funny story. When I switched to private piano lessons from Suzuki, I was studying with a piano teacher in Chicago at the Music Institute of Chicago named Emilio Del Rosario. We called him Mr. D. And I had never played scales in my life before that. I had good teachers even when I was little. And I think I had natural talent, there were certain things that were coming naturally to me and easily to me, but I had never done any scales or any arpeggios or any sort of basic work. And so for the first 6 months, he said, okay, we need to do scales. And he gave me a notebook and he said, every day, take one scale and you need to do right hand slow 10 times, left hand slow 10 times, right hand medium tempo 10 times, left hand medium tempo 10 times, right hand fast 10 times, left hand fast 10 times. Then together, slow 20 times together, medium 20 times together, fast 20 times together. And I would sit and do every single exercise. And I would write it down with like tallies in my notebook. And my mom was like, why are you doing all of them? Just write it down and say you did it. And I was like, no, I have to do every single one, because I was such a goody two-shoes. But this is the kind of like self-discipline that I had. And it was just, I guess I was really motivated. I'm also just, between being a goody two-shoes and wanting to follow the rules all the time, and being very risk averse and not wanting to get in trouble, and then also being a perfectionist, all of these things were adding up to like little 10-year-old me writing and playing 100 scales a day. But I'm also grateful for that, because that really developed my technique. And from that, I had the foundation to do everything else that I wanted to do. But I think back to it, and whenever we remember it, my mom still laughs about it, saying like, I don't know why you didn't just write it down.
It points towards a pre-installed thoroughness in your work ethic, though.
I guess so.
the kind of thing...
Or a bit of...
I can't help but
a little
wonder,
bit of a basket case, maybe.
That sounds like you being very rude to yourself, in my opinion. But
I laugh at little Pallavi. I wouldn't do that now. But I would, with intention, extract the work that was needed from that and find the most efficient way to do that now. That's the difference.
Oh, I love where that goes. It's one of those hen or egg questions, like, would we have come to these conclusions, like really at a visceral level, without having done the work through trial and error? Or
Probably not. Yeah.
Because I know there are so many strategies out there being recommended, and some of them work, but I have come to the conclusion that the true distillation of knowledge or wisdom that I've eventually managed to kind of get my hands on were the kind that I've actually learned through experience. Maybe not always the hard way. It only goes into my bones or into my cells when I've actually experienced it. I've had to like really try out the wrong way to do it before I come across what the right way really is. Now that's probably a controversial thing to say, because I'll often tell my students, hey, I learned the hard way so you don't have to. But sometimes I can't help but wonder if that's a half-truth, so I try and make sure that I'm not in their way to experiment on their own terms anyway.
I think both things can be true. And I think both things are true, that we, at least for me, my experience has been that I've learned the most through experience, the good and the bad. But I've learned the most, especially the bad. I've learned the most through the difficult experiences, because we don't often internalize and really feel it in our bones until we've really passed through it. And there could have been a more efficient way. I used to practice 8 hours a day in high school. I don't think it was because I needed to practice 8 hours a day. I think part of it was that I had a lot of repertoire, and in high school, I was still young. So I needed a lot of repetition to build my muscle memory and to build my technique. But I still think there could have been a more efficient way to practice, because I would practice often on autopilot. I would repeat things like most students do without really knowing what I was trying to fix. I could tell something was wrong, or maybe I missed a note, or I know that I missed that note, or I know that I played 2 keys here, but I wasn't really actively aware or actively listening. And I tell this to my students, or the workshops that I teach all the time. There's this quote that's attributed to Einstein, which is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again in the same way, expecting different results.
I love that, yeah.
And I will often give them a very basic visual representation of that, which is like, let's say I'm here and I want to go here, but I keep walking here. And then I say, no, wait, I wasn't paying attention. I want to go here. And then I walk here again. And I show them that this is what we're doing when we practice without our brain, when we practice without awareness, without consciousness.
Awareness. I was right. Yeah, you hit that word like a millisecond before I did. 100% awareness. That can be a podcast on its own. But
well, that's partly why it's called The Conscious Artist. I mean, it's, about
makes sense,
helping us try to be conscious and present and aware with everything that we're doing, intentional with everything that we're doing. I
love the words you're using there. Presence, intentionality. These are my words. Not, you know what I mean? Not my words, but
I do. But I think without that, we do live on autopilot. And
100%.
Now I practice way less than I did when I was in high school, because I don't need to practice as much. If I have 6 hours of repertoire, then I might need several hours. Or if I have, 3 different programs, maybe I need 6-7 hours. But otherwise, I don't do more than 3-4 hours max.
I love that you say that. I mean,
but I don't sit at the piano and have my brain be somewhere else. Like whatever I do, I am present, I am focused, and I am paying attention. Even if it's for 5 minutes, or it's 20 minutes, or it's an hour. But as soon as I cannot focus anymore, I stop. Because at this point in my life, I don't need the extra hour. Like, I don't need to just like push myself when I'm physically, mentally, emotionally drained, exhausted, and incapable of making any progress, and potentially in a place to let bad habits develop or redevelop. At this point, bad practice is worse than no practice.
Yeah.
And I say that even to my students. I think that's still relevant even at a younger age.
If you're an independent artist feeling stuck, scattered, or just tired of figuring it all out alone, I've made something for you. It's called the Artist Mind Map 2.0. And yeah, it's been 5 years in the making. Built through real work with artists all around the world, from cities like Nashville, Tenerife, Mumbai, New York, Berlin, real-life people, musicians and artists. So not just theory, but lived stuff. And I've rebuilt this into a 6-day clarity sequence, a mini course. Each day gives you one simple prompt or tool, not fluff, just stuff that helps you finally move, focus, and remember who the heck you are. I'm building a community of holistic, happy creatives, musicians and artists who are building their careers on their own terms without selling out, without burning out. And contrary to what the industry says, this might actually be one of the best times in history to be an artist, but only if you know how to navigate what the real work is. So if this is something you're interested in, you can grab it free at holisticmusicianacademy.com. Just go to holisticmusicianacademy.com and click on free training. I feel like artists, musicians, especially performing artists, don't dissect economies in both senses of the word. The idea of an economy, what is being economical, what that actually entails. We have, at least for the larger part of history, we haven't unpacked that to its best potential. Just understanding that quantity is not quality and why it is so, and how practicing lesser, for example, could actually reap higher benefits without sounding too manipulative about the whole thing, but just understanding the art of navigating our own energy and the fact that there is so much more to unpack there. Like, energy is a very precious resource, and wasting it is not something we're doing anyone any favors with.
I have 3 mottos in my life as an artist and as a person, but especially as an artist. Quality over quantity, minimal effort for maximum result, work smarter, not harder. And they're all the same. Minimal effort doesn't mean laziness. Like, it doesn't mean putting in as little as possible. It means, how do I use my muscles in the most efficient and ergonomic way to be able to sustain my energy physically when I'm playing, I don't know, Liszt Sonata or, the 4 Chopin scherzos or Brahms' Second Piano Concerto. Like, how am I maximizing the longevity of my energy?
Yes.
By being efficient with what I'm doing, not wasting energy. It's even a musical thing. When you're playing a phrase, every single note, even if the passage is forte or fortissimo, every single note is not forte or fortissimo. Every single note does not have the same importance or value. Therefore, there are tiny moments, even in a quick phrase. Let's say you have like a passage of like a succession of octaves. Every octave doesn't have the same meaning. Every note doesn't have the same meaning. And there are tiny moments where you can physically lighten up and play slightly less weight, slightly less energy in order to save and reserve. And that's your like little recharging moment, even if it's for like 1 second or 1.5 seconds, that then allows you to maybe like do a huge crescendo and not play every note loud, which, by the way, also doesn't sound good because then it sounds like we're screaming,
So true.
So it's like very subtle things like that we don't actually maybe think about, but I think about all the time. And I'm sometimes when I'm teaching, I'm just like telling my students I'll like play a passage for them and show them like, okay, if I were to practice this passage, this is what I would do. And then I'm telling them with words out loud my entire brain process. And I think it's not stuff that I was really taught. I think all of my teachers gave me different points and perspectives of those things, but I had to piece it together and actually make sense of it in a sort of basic, everyday practical use. Does that make sense?
100%. Reverse engineer it and then pass it on the right way.
Yeah, maybe.
There is a lot of, I know the word guru and gurukul has been hijacked in some cases in the worst possible ways, but there is a lot of truth to some of the more ancient texts which talk about what the actual act of passing knowledge on in the guru system is. I'm probably not qualified to really like unpack that per se, but I compare it to a form of osmosis between a true mentor and their mentee. There'll be like a passing on of, I'm not even sure information is the right word, but passing off of knowledge, wisdom, in a way that it has so much more to do. Tradition, legacy, lineage, I guess that,
Yeah.
But clearly we could go off on an entire intercontinental flight talking about justice. But let me ask you this. Do you remember when you realized that you were extraordinarily good at what you're doing? Was there like a point when you realized, oh, I'm actually like really good at this, to a point where I'm going to kill it as a career?
I'll say it this way. Post therapy, I am aware of my strengths and I value them. I know what value I bring to the table as a person and as an artist. And I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to share that. I am at peace with the fact, although I still struggle with it, being a people pleaser, recovering people pleaser.
Yeah.
But I am, for the most part, at peace with the fact that I am not for everyone, and that's okay. The people that connect and understand, relate, appreciate, value, respect who I am as a person, as an artist, what I share through my art, through my work, those people will find me and I will find those people. And that's enough. And I say this and I mean it. And it helps me to remember this. Just like we cannot be friends with every single person we meet in the world because we don't click with every single person. We can't have a romantic relationship with every single person we meet in the world because we don't click with every person. In the same way, we cannot expect that every single person's going to click with what we have to say, musically or otherwise. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Still working on it, but I'm okay with it.
Very wise words spoken. I really appreciate that. I'm still wondering, though, taking the path that you've taken is not for the faint of heart. And in my experience, it's usually the realization of someone, especially in the formative years, of the fact that they are exceptional, which you obviously are, needless to say, or just like, I love this so much, I don't care what's happening, I'm in, I'm not even really thinking about if that's a good idea or not. Any suggestions on what your tendency was?
Yes, I had a very big formative experience when I was a kid. So I mentioned that I played violin as well growing up from the age of 6 to 14. And at the age of 9, 10, and 11, I participated as a violinist in a summer camp, an orchestra program called the Disney's Young Musician Symphony Orchestra. This no longer exists, but it used to be an orchestra program for young talented kids ages 9 to 12 or 13 all around the US, sponsored by Disney, run by Disney. And each year it would be held in a different location. And so the first year that I did it, which was 97, it took place in LA at the Hollywood Bowl.
Wow.
98 was in Chicago at the Ravinia Festival. 99 was in New York at Avery Fisher Hall, which is now David Geffen Hall. And in 98, the one that was in Chicago, I was 10 years old. I was attending as a violinist. And on the third day of the camp, the boy who was supposed to perform a Mozart piano concerto with the orchestra in the final concert was playing Frisbee and slipped and broke his wrist.
Ouch.
And the director of the camp knew that I was first and foremost a pianist, that was my main instrument. And so she asked if I would step in. And like, mind you, I was 10. This was Mozart piano concerto number 21. I didn't know the concerto. I hadn't even heard the concerto. And the concert was a week away. And so I spent about probably 6 hours crying and hyperventilating, I don't want to do this. I can't do this.
Oh my God.
And finally talked to my parents, and my friends convinced me and whatever. And because this was in Chicago and I happened to be living in Chicago at the time, my teacher was around. And so for 2 days, my teacher worked with me, I don't know how many hours. I want to say 12 hours a day, helping me learn the concerto. It was just the third movement, but still the third movement of Mozart 21. And 2 days later, I started rehearsals with the orchestra. I learned it, I memorized it. And a week from the first moment, a week later, I performed it, making my orchestral debut at the Ravinia Festival in Chicago in front of 10,000 people, because it was also televised nationally. And it's a huge, open summer concert venue. And I mean, I was so nervous that day. I remember crying in the parking lot. I still have this memory.
Before or after?
No, before. I was like just so nervous. I remember my mom like trying to feed me a protein shake, and I'm just like standing there like next to the car, like crying, so nervous, but I did it. And, you know, it was televised. I have a recording of it, and
Wow.
I'm just like in awe of this little 10-year-old that could do that. And I mean, that was such a big experience that after that, I said, I absolutely want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, I want to be a concert pianist. Wow. And it also started like a lifelong trajectory of like last minute concerts, whether it's been like self-inflicted or I get called at the last minute. It has happened many times that I've had to prepare something in 2 days or 3 days or whatever. And so it's a skill that I'm proud to have, but it's also caused me many gray hairs. So
very interesting. Do you
So that was my big experience.
Wow. And I'm guessing that's when it was also clear to your teachers and people around that the piano was your true calling.
I suppose so. I mean, everything else around it is fuzzy, but I do remember that.
Do you remember the audience, how they responded or how you felt after having performed for them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little moment in the video where I look up at the conductor and I smile and he smiles at me. And I remember that. I remember not the whole performance. I remember like one phrase. And then I went back in the violin section for the second half after that and played in the back of the seconds for the rest of the concert. I remember my dad, I mean, it's on video as well, but I remember my dad, came up to the stage after with flowers. My sister was supposed to do it, but she was too shy. So my dad came and gave me flowers. And, you know, but when you're on stage and you've just played something so big and had this big experience, even today, I'm not really aware of, like, I'm aware of the audience in the fact that the entire performance is a collective experience with them. Without them, there is no magic. There isn't that like intangible electric energy that exists in the hall. Without the audience, there isn't that there. But I'm also not aware of them in the sense that if they're standing, if they're not, I mean, I can feel the energy. I can feel when they're restless or hopefully not restless, but I can feel when there's like movement or when they're like really attuned. Something that I really love to do is to speak to my audiences. And this is something that I've been doing since I was a kid. My teacher in high school really sort of forced me when I was younger to do it, instilling in me that it was a necessary skill. And my goodness, am I so grateful for that because it taught me communication. But I love communicating with the audience in that way and having them also get to see like, who is Pallavi the human? Because of course, when I'm sitting down to play a concert, especially with some of the pieces that I'm playing, some of the music, some of the repertoire is very intense and serious and dark. And I'm a very different persona when I'm performing, right? I mean, but when I'm speaking to them, I'm smiling and I'm maybe very animated, and I appreciate that they get to see that personality, who is Pallavi the person, and they get to see the complete personality of who is Pallavi the artist. And it, in a way, gives me a little grace, because when you get to know someone on a human level, even if it's just through them saying, hey, I love this music so much, and this is why I love it, and I hope you'll love it too. Thanks for coming. Even if it's just that, there's a bond there. There's a tiny little bond. And that for me, every time I get to speak to my audiences, which I do it intentionally with every single recital, chamber music as well. The only places that I often don't get to are concerto performances. And then maybe the conductor will speak to the audience instead. But it's so essential for me, sort of, one can say breaking that fourth wall, one can say connecting with the audience, one can say, opening the communication channel, however you want to put it, that it really adds to the experience for me. And for me also, I feel like I bring them in more, that they're maybe more actively listening. They're more actively engaged because now there's a human connection as well.
Do you think that negligence of that human connection that's been prevalent in the music industry, especially in more quote unquote, what's the word I'm looking for, like sophisticated music circles, like the kind of circles you play in, might have had to do with the fact that a lot of the industry has been male dominated for most of its history?
I don't know. I cannot say, I don't have enough knowledge or information to be able to give a conclusive answer. I don't know if I would say, though, that it is necessarily related to that, because in Mozart's time and Beethoven's time and Brahms' time and Chopin's time, a lot of the performances were also like salon performances. The culture was salon performances, which was a very intimate sort of setting where the audience would even clap in the middle of a movement if they liked a cadenza or, if they liked a specific movement. And so there was a lot more, I think, direct engagement with the people that were listening.
Interesting. Just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, my active involvement in classical music is close to non-existent. I've only studied what I needed to understand piano better as an instrument, which is my first instrument in college. My practice revolves around jazz and popular music, experimental music. And I've always noticed about how most of my male colleagues are just real absolute failures at actually like connecting with their audiences for the longest time to a point,
I see your point.
To a point where we really had to train. I include myself, by the way. I was, although I'll have to say, like, I had to rewire a whole bunch of things to really understand that it was okay to kind of really take that on as an active responsibility, as a part of my job. Whereas the women I would work with seemed like so much more comfortable and natural at going around.
I see your point. Yes, we are, as a gender, more used to community and connection. It is essential for our well-being. I think it is essential for
all of our well-being.
Male well-being as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
But it's not taught.
We're just really bad at it.
And I say this all the time. Toxic masculinity, first and foremost, affects men.
I can confirm.
Yes. Because without you guys having healthy guidance and healthy tools, of course that behavior is then going to bleed into how you treat others, namely women. But not like learning that crying is weakness, emotions are weakness, connection is weakness, vulnerability is weakness, friendship is weakness. I mean, and by the way, then attributing those things to women. Don't run like a girl. Don't cry like a girl.
Yeah,
don't be emotional like a girl. Then it's also inherently teaching men to not like women, because all these things that are bad are feminine. And we all have masculine and feminine energy in us.
Exactly.
And when men are able to lead from a healthy masculine place of doing, and women are able to exist in a healthy feminine place of receiving, we have a good balance. But without the feminine energy balance in the males of also connecting with the female feminine energy, we lose that connection. Then it's only this, like it has to keep.
And that results in internal disconnection.
Yeah. And I'm very, very, very aware of this, because I spent a lot of my life until therapy mostly leading from masculine energy. It's also something that I learned from even my mother, who does a lot. And, whether we want to call it like not being able to let go of control, or being a perfectionist or whatever, I see these qualities and these traits in me that I'm working continuously on trying to let go of. That the need for control is a lack of safety and trust.
Yeah, there you go. circle,
right? Safety and trust come from a feminine place, I think, from the feminine energy. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what it feels like to me. When I feel safe and trusting, I feel open to receiving. When I don't feel safe, I am doing, I am controlling. So that for me shows me the internal balance within when I'm in my feminine energy. And it doesn't mean I'm not doing anything, right? The feminine energy is about nurturing. It's about hosting. I don't mean just hosting people, but, hosting energy. I feel that difference in myself, depending on the situation that I'm in, the people that I'm around, if I'm stressed or not. Like, I feel that difference. And I try to actively work on continuously getting back to a place of groundedness, safety, trust, flow. All of those things are connected, I think, with with the feminine energy. And
hard relate.
It's not about being female.
100% agree. That resonates very much with me to a point. It's honestly, it's rare. Again, all of those could have been words out of my mouth, and I'm not just saying that. I couldn't agree more.
Like-minded.
Yeah, indeed. But I do have an interesting anecdote to share where the interplay of these energies, for better or for worse, made themselves very apparent in my professional life, which is one of the most extended tours I did was with a jazz quartet, where I was a featured guest, and our set list was based on 2 sets, where in the first half of it was more of the quartet, the ensembles, primarily instrumental repertoire, where I was playing piano and keyboards. And the second set had a vocal feature where I was basically taking on the primary role of a singer, where a lot of my personal repertoire as a singer-songwriter was being enmeshed with the band sound and so on. And I remember we were on tour for 3 years, and the first year and a half felt impossible for me to do. Because it felt like when I sing, and this might be a personal thing, like the approach I have in my singing delivery is a very feminine one. Also, my voice, also my vocal ranges between alto and soprano. Like I'd sometimes sub for the girls in my choir class back in the day. Unconventional voice for a male, but also a lot of the music I write is comes from a more feminine space. Very personal, very intimate, very fragile almost sometimes. And the first set I was playing was one where I was tapping into all the masculine conservatory education I'd had, as a pianist, as a jazz, quote-unquote, fusion pianist, keyboard player. And I remember thinking, I felt it's like 2 people were struggling for space in the same body. And the manner in which I would engage internally within the band also felt very confusing. It took me over a year to realize what exactly was happening. And actually my mentor or therapist or counselor at the time at some point said, your musician archetype is that he would speak a lot in metaphors. Think of that girl who's singing alone in the church. That's you. It's like, whoa, what just happened? And all of it fell into place. It's like, okay,
wow,
that makes so much sense. And for a lot of people, that might be very out there. But for me, it was a complete light bulb moment. I'm getting goosebumps when I think about it now.
Wow.
And that was also the time when I actually started toying with the idea of gender fluidity. Is that what I am? Up until I realized that, fighting some strange colonial semantic in order to stand up for what I believe in, I learned pretty fast, no, this is really not what I'm into. That's whereas my ancestral heritage found a way more scientific approach to figuring this stuff out. So, but for a year, I actually really seriously considered quote-unquote coming out as gender fluid. That just dissolved on its own. How did I get into this? I totally made this about myself now, didn't I?
I love it. This is a fascinating story, though.
Yeah,
we were talking about the feminine and masculine balance and energy.
Exactly. Okay, a concert pianist is literally one of the toughest professions out there, right? I mean, you would give neurosurgeons a run for their money. For anyone out there who doesn't know.
I don't know about that.
Well, I would. My best friend as a kid was a neurosurgeon, one of the best. There's so much that doesn't. Every single note you play literally, touches physically your brain, your spine. I think concert pianists don't get enough credit. I say that as a professionally trained pianist myself too, though. But the modality of piano I go into has so much more leeway. Like I can basically do whatever the F I want as long as I figure out a way to justify it on my terms. What you're doing, representing like literally a few hundred years of culture with like minimum room for error, and like doing it as Pallavi Mahidhara. So that's like the dichotomy in itself, On one hand, you're representing these years of culture and tradition, but on the other hand, you can't do it as someone else. So like the physical, the spiritual, the mental pressures that come with, I would contend neurosurgeons would take a bow at some point, but that's me. So I'm asking, that's one of the toughest jobs out there, especially the piano in itself has been proven to be one of the most physically unhealthy instruments out there. It's no human being was actually designed to like tap how much does a grand piano key weigh? What is it, like 5 grams, 6 grams? Like these were not what our fingers were made to do. Yeah. Why do you do it? I mean, this has to be a calling. How would you describe yours?
I can't live without it.
Makes sense.
Put it simply, I can't live without it. I mean, you didn't ask it, but you were going to ask, like when I go on stage, like what's my priority, Yeah. I would say presence.
Oh.
To be present, because every live concert is a once in a lifetime experience. The way I feel that day will never be repeated. The way the audience feels that day will never be repeated. Doesn't matter if I'm playing the same concert 3 days in a row with the same piano. Let's say even the audience is the same. That doesn't happen. But let's say even the audience is the same. It's not going to be the same concert. And so for me, the most important thing is that I'm present so that I can not only share from a place of authenticity and genuine connection, but I can also experience what is happening live in this collective concert experience that is happening between me and the piano and the audience and the environment and the sound and the intangible energy and the magic that's happening. That is really magical. It's living art. And I don't get that feeling anywhere else. It's very, very, very magical.
Yeah, I can relate. By the way, you've officially qualified for what I call the Intercontinental Drive Award. So we have guests where I want to go on an intercontinental drive with, so we can just keep talking. That award was just waiting to give itself to you anyway. But in order to respect your time, I have a few audience questions I want to...
Yes, absolutely.
For those of you who like to sit with things a little longer, the second half of this conversation lives inside the community. Free to access, but behind one small act of intention. Sign up. You'll find the link in the episode notes. It opens not just this full, unedited exchange, but also the growing archive of raw, unfiltered dialogues from past sessions. See you on the other side.
Just another voice out there.